Hi, welcome to the Brief Book Reviews channel, otherwise known as An Old Guy Reviews the Book that he's read this week. So what's the old guy read this week? Well, the book I've read this week is this one. It's called Actually, I'm a Murderer by author Terry Deary. It was published as a hardback here in the United Kingdom by Constable on the 12th of June 2025. I guess Terry Deary is probably best known for his Horrible Histories series. He's a very prolific author. He's written for adults, for children, both fiction and non-fiction. But he's always liked crime thrillers, and never written one. So to celebrate his 350th book, he's finally written a murder mystery, a crime thriller. And it's this one called, as I said, Actually, I'm a Murderer. So what's it all about, I hear you say? Well, the story kicks off with an introduction in the present day. It's actually 2023. There's a guy called Tony Davis who's telling a tale, and he's saying it's a very sort of solemn start. He's saying he'd made a Faustian pact 50 years ago, and he knows his end is nigh. And he then begins to relate the tale on which this book is based. So we go from 2023, where the introduction is written, back to 1973, 50 years ago. And the story is centered around four strangers that are thrown together on a railway journey. So picture the scene. It's a late night in London. The last full passenger train has gone. So the only train from London to Newcastle is one that's basically freight with one carriage, one old-fashioned carriage on the back. And I guess these are the days pre-high-speed trains. In those days, it would have been a diesel electric, probably a class 55, probably a Deltic, pulling the train, and the old-fashioned passenger carriage would be one with a sliding door and where everybody was lumped in together. We don't have the space or the design of modern-day trains. But I digress. Yes, I used to be a train spotter, and yes, I used to work on the railways. Guilty as charged. So I like railway journeys. So a murder mystery which starts on a railway journey, it had to be read. That and the title. Less of the waffle cliff. Get back to the plot. Right, four people. They're on the London to Newcastle train. They're stuck together for what's going to be a long journey. It takes a long time now. In those days, it would have taken even longer. So we've got four people. We've got Tony Davis, who starts off the book. Tony's an actor, and like a lot of actors, he spends a lot of time resting. So he's on the train. There's another guy who looks quite posh. He's an older guy, grey hair, but he's exceptionally well dressed, and he's called Edward Delmont. And we find out later that he's an advisor to Edward Heath, the then Prime Minister, and he's heading up north to do some negotiations to do with Britain's entry to what used to be called the Common Market. Another person there is Claire, a lady called Claire Thirlwell, and we find out that she's in sales and marketing, and her company is looking to introduce a personal computer, which in those days was just a thing of somebody's imagination. And finally, we get to the fourth person. He's just called Mr. Brown. He's John Brown. He's, you wouldn't notice the guy in a crowd. He's got a little, very thin pencil moustache, a little pair of John Lennon type glasses, and seems quite innocuous. Well, as the train journey commences, they decide to sort of guess what each other's game is. So they quickly establish that Tony is an actor. Edward is he's a negotiator. He works in political circles, and we find out that Claire, of course, is IT related. So then we get to Mr. Brown, his sister, and he says, "Well, actually, I'm a murderer." And they all go, "Oh, hang on a minute, it's a wind up surely." And then he says, "Well, no, it's just business. I get paid to kill people. I kill people in a different way all the time. I move from place to place, so the police never know, that it's me doing all the murders. So yeah, that's my gig. That's what I'm doing." And yeah, they're a little bit sceptical, as you can imagine, but it's a long journey, and they carry on. They eventually get to Newcastle in the early hours of the morning, and Tony and Claire, they're a little bit perturbed about this. Mr. Delmont, the posh guy who's working with Ted Heath, he just dismisses it as bloke's an idiot. Of course it's not. But Tony and Claire are a little bit concerned. So meeting the train from London are two police officers on duty. One of them's got an old school, old-fashioned copper called Jack Greatorex, and he's with his colleague, PC Aline James. Aline is WPC, and she's very, very sharp. Jack is old school, and one of the things that comes through this book is set in 1973, and there's a lot of misogyny. There's a lot of basically bad treatment for women police officers, where they're just sort of dismissed as, oh, they do the women's stuff, But Aline's not having that, and she's quite sharp. So Tony and Claire tell Jack and Aline what happened on the train. Jack immediately goes, oh, the bloke's a fantasist, take no notice. But Aline's not so sure, and she decides that maybe she'll keep an eye on this guy, and soon finds out what he's driving, and that sort of sparks off her interest in the matter. So that is basically the start of the tale. By the end of the following day, one of those 4 people will be murdered, one will have turned into a blackmailer, and one will have committed a burglary. So this is the tale told by eventually 3 people. We have Tony's view of what's going on. We have Mr. Brown, the actually I'm a murderer guy, and Aline, the copper, who's trying to get this thing sorted out. So it's a very well written tale. It's Terry Deary, so it's witty, it's a little bit dark, but it's very clever. It's well written. And certainly as an old git who remembers what it was like in 1973, it catches the moment, it catches what it was like at that time, the attitudes of the day, the way that police, particularly the police, didn't have the forensics that they do nowadays, and it was very much a case of, he looks guilty, it must be him. But so, really enjoyable murder mystery. There's a little twist right at the end, which is a little bit telegraphed, but well written, humorous, and I'd give it 7 out of 10. It's a really good murder mystery. So I think that's probably it for this week's brief book review. Look forward to seeing you next week. 10:10 till we do it again. Thanks for watching.